Welcome to Rock and Roll World Magazine. This is Reverend William. Today our guest is Ryan Almighty.
Hello,
professional
Reverend.
weirdo and human blood artist.
Yes.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
That's fantastic. Today we're with Ryan because he has recently gained some media attention with his current art project.
Yes, the Manson Project.
From what I've read and understand, the Manson Project contains a blood portrait. And prior to getting all into the Manson thing, how did you get into human blood art?
Well, I was dating a semi-well-known young lady by the name of Liz Mankowski. If you ever watched Jerry Springer with Gigi Allen on it, the little girl that was on there that was running away from her parents to be with him, she and I were dating. Let's just say it was a short and tumultuous relationship. We made a trip to New York City, a lost weekend kind of thing, and it was hellaciously awful. Constant fighting. She was batshit crazy. I'm not the most sane guy on earth anyway, but let's just say that we indulged in some extracurricular activities of her choice that let's just say we were very tired on the trip back. So, we were driving back, and she was peacefully sleeping, and this was just after she made my life a living hell on this vacation. And I looked at her, and I was just very angry that she could sleep peacefully as I drove. And to back up a little bit, I was commissioned to do a Baphomet painting for somebody's drumhead. It was actually Jeff Clayton from Anti-Scene's daughter. She was having me do that for her boyfriend. And I was, kind of hemming and hawing about it. It's like, hey, there's a million Baphomets. You could use clip art for this. Why are you having me do this? And then it hit me while I was looking at Lizzie sleeping peacefully. It's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it in my own blood. I'm going to draw the blood out with a syringe. I'll take pictures of me drawing the blood out. And, when people see pictures of a guy with horns pulling his own blood to paint this Baphomet, it's going to make it extra creepy for her. And, I kind of geared up towards it anyway, and I really started, and I did that Baphomet for her, and I liked the way blood worked as paint. So I wanted to explore it a little bit more, and I started experimenting with doing tones and a technique to use it like watercolors. And then it kind of hit me that I made a trip to the Mutters Museum, and there's a wall of skulls there. And I collect skulls anyway, but you never know who the skulls are. They're just nameless skulls. But in there's a bio for each person whose skull they have on display.
Right.
And you get a whole different kind of feeling looking at those skulls, knowing who they were, what they did, the human side of it. So it kind of clicked with me. It's like, I should start doing these paintings in people's blood. Make sure I record the taking of the blood from them, so there's a bio as to whose blood is in the painting. And one day when I'm gone, they're gone, and it's a whole other generation looking at them, it will have let's just say I'm hoping it will evoke a response and feeling when they look at it. Whether it's unsettled, whether it's fascination, it's really incidental, as long as they feel something and they're not bored.
Well, I believe it is probably... It is completely somebody, the life forces of the blood and everything. My favorite skull at the Mutter Museum is the professional idiot.
Right.
They have the skulls and one's idiot. And being that, obviously, you're doing Manson portraits at this time, what had gotten you into the true crime?
Well, I've been collecting true crime for years. I've always liked unusual things. So back in the 90s, I was writing Gacy and Ottistool, and eventually I wrote Manson, because at the time you could sell that kind of thing on eBay, and I was like, hey, Manson's autographs go for about $100 a pop. He can literally just write $100, with a swoop of his hand. And I got a hold of him, and to break the ice, I sent him a portrait I did of him. And there's actually a recording of a conversation where we talk about the artwork. And I could never really get through to him what my intentions were. All the phone calls were recorded. They're not allowed by law to make a profit from their infamy.
Right.
So I'm trying to tell him, look, we do this, I'll send you money, and it never really got through. At that point, I didn't get anybody. I did talk to him quite a bit, and I did exchange artwork with him. And so, I'm definitely fond of those times we spent swapping yarns. He was definitely a multifaceted interesting fellow. But so anyway, that's where the fascination with Manson and how it carried over to the blood painting. And I had actually contacted his grandson about using his blood in portraits and possibly getting some of the ash. And his grandson wasn't interested in doing it. He was respectful. He liked the art, but it seemed a little morbid for him. He is a Christian, and he didn't seem to like the idea of portraits being painted in his blood. So I eventually brought this up. It was just there's a fellow by the name of Stoner Van Houten who is a big-time Manson fan. He does tours on the Spawn Ranch. And I had brought up Stoner doesn't like Jason very much. I have no problem with Jason. Actually, a lot of respect for the man, to be honest. But Houghton does not like him. And I just brought up, well, when everybody was chatting, there's only like maybe 6 or 7 people, watching this podcast and interacting. And I said, yeah, I tried to do this project, and Jason just wasn't interested. Well, there was a fellow, I'm not going to say his last name, but a fellow by the name of Tony. And he was watching that same podcast. He's like, well, I was there. I got ashes. That sounds like an awesome project. And it went from there. I was like, fantastic. You will get the first painting. I'm doing this with a series. He sent the ashes out, and it went from there. And the first painting is almost complete. We just need to add the ashes to the eyes.
Hopefully we'll be seeing that in a little bit.
Oh, you will.
With the amount of controversy that's associated, unfortunately, with this, because I think it's
it's not unfortunate.
I mean,
it all works for the benefit of the artwork. In the end, no press is bad press.
No press is bad. Oh shit! I was gonna say with I've seen throughout and as far as in the afterworld, you can actually be pressed into albums. There's institutions out there.
They'll put ashes in dildos.
That
for your lost loved ones.
Fireworks, all kinds of stuff. So I mean, I myself don't view it as an extremely controversial thing. I think it's actually an excellent dedication.
And I agree with you. And I wouldn't have a problem with somebody doing that with my ashes. I think where the problem lies, and the controversy is kind of coming at me from both sides. Obviously, Manson stirs up controversy. I mean, it was
right.
He was attached. Debatable whether he caused it or not, but he was attached to a pretty horrific crime that basically took the Summer of Love and turned it into the Summer of Hate. They turned it into a super freak show, which of course I love, and then Bugliosi and turned him into a monster. So there are people that kind of fall into the Bugliosi helter-skelter mentality of this guy is pure evil. How could you be involved in any way with any of his remains doing this? And of course the blood scares them too. So there's the superstitious that are upset by it, the normies that are upset by it. Now, where this was a little bit of surprise, there's an awful lot of Manson fans, sycophants, and actual followers out there, most of which are fighting amongst themselves anyway. But they're easily offended. I know I find that hard to believe this day and age. People are pretty tough-skinned. They're not offended by anything. But let's just say there's a lot of them that are very offended. And their stance is, Charlie was in prison. He's finally free. You're putting him in a painting to be gawked at. He's in another prison. I don't agree with that. I think that's silly. But that's what they're thinking. They're also not very happy with the source of my ashes. They know that it's legit. He was an individual that went to the funeral, and he was Manson's grandson's ride. He gave him a place to stay. He wasn't a friend of Charlie Manson's. But he was there for the whole process, the funeral, and then when they spread the ashes in the national park, people were doing things like rubbing it on their face and doing a whole tribute to Charlie. Well, he took it upon himself to let's just say take some souvenirs. Now, a lot of them are saying he stole them. The way I look at it, they're dumping it on the ground. I mean, if this is going to sound disrespectful, and I don't mean it to sound quite as disrespectful as it might, but if you take a shit on the ground and somebody scoops it up, you can't say they stole your lump of shit. They were being spread. They were being dumped. Right. He grabbed them as a memento, and he had the intentions, from what he says, of taking them to Death Valley and spreading them there. Well, they didn't make it to Death Valley. They made it into his house, and then they made it to me. So a lot of people are very upset with him because they don't like how he ended up with the ashes. I can't say is I probably wouldn't have done the same exact fucking thing, and especially how valuable these became. And I'm not in it. I'm not doing this for monetary gain. I'm doing this because I was friends with him, and I approached his grandson about it first. I just lucked into finding a source.
Right.
I think it's important artwork. I personally think Charlie would approve. I would approve of somebody doing it with me. He obviously wants to be noticed. I would imagine he wants to be remembered. And it's not a disrespectful memory, in my opinion. Yes, it's honing in on the morbid and the darkness of it, because that's what I like. But it's also being respectful. The artwork's going to be 4 panels. One's going to be Manson as a child. 2 of them will be from the 60s during the whole trial and the Charlie's family, craziness. And the last one's going to be him as an old man. So it's going to be a tribute to his life. I'm going to have ATWA plaques on each of the frames. So it is a genuine tribute to him. It's also, there is a level of exploitation and it's a bit of a freak show, but death is always a little bit of a freak show. People lay out the body and people go and look at it and talk about how good they look.
Well, you think about that entire process is
right.
kind of an exploitation,
right.
spending $1,000 for a casket for your $10,000 plot to...
Exactly. The exploitation is what makes life fun, makes it worth living. I like to think Charlie would approve of this despite what other people do, but I can't speak for him. No more than the people that claim that he would be angry about it can speak for him. Nobody knows. He's gone.
No.
But this is doing something to keep a memory of him. Right. Same with all the video footage and the tales people tell. But I'm doing my little part to immortalize him, Even not that he needs me, but this is something so somebody can actually see him, though.
Right. So you said the first portrait is going off to...
Well, okay, now the 4 that I was talking about, that's my project.
Oh, okay, so that's for
the
you.
agreement I had with the individual that procured the ashes was to give him the first painting.
Okay.
Now, he has made public statements as to what he intends to do with it, what his motivations are. That's him, not me. What he does with it is on him, by him, for him. I just agreed to give him the first painting for the ashes themselves. Now, I do know what happened to him. The painting has been sold for a decent amount of money, and it's going to Zach Baggins from Ghost Adventures. He has a museum in Las Vegas, and it's the Haunted Museum, and it does have some murderabilia and things in there, and it's going to be on display there. I didn't make a penny from this, but I got to be honest, I'm happy it's going to a museum where people can see it. Hopefully the actual project that I'm doing still gets the attention that this piece that's going to the Haunted Museum goes, but I'm happy that it's going to be on display and people are going to see it.
Right.
And
those panels are for yourself, right?
The panels that I'm using, I will keep on display myself, but I may put them on loan. I may take them on tour if anywhere wants to display them. But I found a lot of people won't touch me. They're very upset with Manson because of it being controversial. I just ran into that with my local radio station that always followed my artwork, which was controversial and provocative anyway because it's human blood. But the minute Manson got thrown in the mix of, whoa, we can't go there. It's actually the one to put the stop to it was Dennis Drew from 10,000 Maniacs. I guess there's one maniac he doesn't approve of.
9,999 maniacs.
Exactly. Let's exclude Charlie from that one. He's just a little too much.